teleport was cancelled by Vedius, the max range hook! And that's gonna be a kill here. And Rekkles plus that. That's a kill to Rekkles rather. That's a double. He's looking for more. Kill. That's a triple. He's looking for 4.
Bring the win, bring the win, bring the win, bring the win. Bring the win, bring the win.
The Fnatic go 2-1. Fnatic, if they win, they clinch that first place seed. Chum the Waters is connected. Huni puts down the cannon barrage. The 1v1 happens, and it's Soaz that takes down the overpowered pirate.
Get back. Okay, he flashed. Save. We end the game.
Yes.
Good job, Niels.
Yes!
Oh, nice!
In the 4th game, after 15,000 gold down, they're going to force game 5. Now it's top laners on top laners. And we do see another powder keg is up. It's going to tick down. Look at the
Overheating damage.
Soaz got it.
You cheer.
I can go.
I can go from my side.
Vas-y.
I'm moving.
Tristana. Flash. Go Tristana. Oh.
I slower. Go. I speed you.
Nice.
Holy shit.
Yes, boys.
Fnatic in game 5 of the Summer Split are going to hilt the Nexus. This is the 5th LCS Split victory for Fnatic.
The summer finals of 2015 in Stockholm, Sweden were iconic for many reasons. Back-to-back pentakills, a first final for an Origen completing their challenger to World Speedrun, and a 5th title for EU overlords Fnatic. Both teams were riding high and found themselves at the peak of Europe on that fateful Sunday in Stockholm. Now, we didn't know it back then, but everything would change forever the following year, with G2 entering and the league and taking over Europe, shaking up Fnatic and Origen's world. Fnatic all of a sudden had an opponent worthy to fight and had to watch G2 lift the trophy 4 excruciating times before they could finally reclaim their throne in Copenhagen in 2018. It forced Fnatic to evolve, to re-evaluate their rosters and priorities. The rivalry between Fnatic and G2 has forced the two teams to break boundaries and always strive to be better, and in turn, motivated all the teams behind them. Today, Fnatic finds themselves playing second fiddle once again after getting obliterated by G2 in the spring finals. And that is just not enough for a championship team. This summer, the Fnatic of Selfmade and a reborn again Rekkles looks poised and hungry to reclaim the title and do damage at Worlds. Now for Origen, they look at Stockholm as a beacon of what could be. And since then, have desperately fought to become more than that third place team, more than that team that narrowly misses out on Worlds, that team that has all the wonderful pieces but can't seem to finish the puzzle. This summer, they have to make the pieces fit, but it is so much harder than it was back in 2015. The Stockholm Summer Finals signaled the end of an era. Since then, the game has changed, the teams have leveled up, the rookies rise up every chance they get, and Europe is more competitive than ever. If Fnatic and Origen want to lay claim to the title, they're going to have to show us they are worthy. And it all begins right now with this match of the week.
The game is getting faster, is getting scarier. It is about balancing on the knife's edge and being willing to put yourself in the firing line. Here comes Xerxe.
And now looking for a wraparound.
Sett. Showstopper delivers to Origen's waiting arms, and the zoomie is bye-bye. Teleport is absolutely questionable. Melissa will go in. Oh, Hylissang with the goal! That was such a good rocket grab.
He just knocked it out of his hands.
The individual players on teams like G2 and Fnatic force everybody on the enemy team to make constant decisions all the time. And when they have a lapse of judgment and they decide to join for a team fight, win the team fight, That lapse in judgment of after the team fight, what do we do now? In that moment, we've already decided.
Upset. Now the fight really begins because there's the double kill coming out. Hylissang's going to take an inhibitor tower though.
The thing about Fnatic, the way to beat them is to just purely play discipline. You need to play the map smart against these players or they will punish you. So I think it's just having a strategic mind and knowing where you need to do to get the win.
So Origen's like, okay, we have to commit to the split push now. FLICKR lands.
Hylissang, you have to go down here. Upset takes the kill, and Hylissang was just a little bit too greedy, a little bit too deep.
I just don't feel like they have that guy in Origen that calls for that unorthodox or a bit more risky play. And why so many times they just end up in a situation where nothing is happening, they're waiting for the right moment, but a team like ourselves just give very few right moments.
Nukeduck already almost down, he gets caught out, and now Upset's the next target, they're just dead. Origen can't do anything about this, they just get swept off the map. Fnatic able to take 3, only lose 1, and now can push in for an inhibitor.
Their strength can also be their weakness and they can tend to play too aggressive and it can definitely also backfire.
Look at the flank. A lot of damage. Sleepy Trouble Bubble gets missed. Gold card is prime. Gets thrown out. The slam dunk got stopped. Origen is constantly playing second fiddle. They seem to be missing that key something that allows them to bridge the gap.
We have been improving and hopefully it will take us far.
Fnatic will top the table, undefeated.
Welcome to the conversation.
100% Fnatic.
They have done it.
Seen OG put their foot on the gas pedal, and now we just never, ever want them to stop it.
Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC. Ahead of our match of the week, Fnatic versus Origen. We're going to head into the draft with these wonderful colleagues right here, Vedius and Froskurinn. So let's start by getting that sweet, sweet draft talk going. What do you got for me?
Well, I think there's a couple things we wanted to hit on. So, Frosk, do we want to look at mid lane or do we want to look at the bans first?
Let's go bans actually first.
So one of the things that we've been talking a little bit about was that Fnatic have a tendency to ban Kalista on blue side. And this was something that I brought up yesterday, but I think we're actually seeing it a lot more across other teams. That's not exclusive to Fnatic. And what's interesting about the meta right now is I think that for 80 carries, this is probably one of the rare times we've had like 4 or 5 S-tier 80 carries that are all very high in priority. And if you're red side, the typical bans are Syndra and Varus, but if you're blue side, it feels to me like Kalista is becoming the first priority ban unless you're willing to first pick it. And we saw that earlier from G2. We've seen it from a couple of other teams here in Europe as well. And it's interesting to me that we're yet to see Fnatic put a high priority on the champion.
And I was just about to bring that up because when you look at Hilly, it seems like the perfect champion to work with Hilly and Fnatic's really heavy engage style that they've brought to their team fights, especially on the back half of spring. But the fact that they don't want to grab it tells me that it's something about the support pool that's not really lining up there.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because last split, we saw a lot of Kalista top, and the debate is it that they're too afraid to flex it between 2 roles? Well, we haven't really seen it play top this split, so I don't know. The other question is it something that's within Rekkles' champion pool? Expectations are, of course, it would be. And we've seen him play 4 different champions now across their 4 games, so the guy clearly has a very deep champion pool. So it may just be a meta thing where right now, Kalista isn't at the top of their priority list, but I do hope that we get to see it because I'd really like to see Rekkles play some Kalista.
It could also just be that they don't want to necessarily play around bot lane. I mean, Rekkles is playing the Soraka, and it feels like it's much more about Selfmade and Nemesis and then kind of swinging them out into side lanes rather than all ganking onto the Rekkles show.
Yeah, we'll look if they look to ban Kalista out again or if someone ends up picking it up. Another thing I want to talk about, and I know you guys have mentioned a lot, is that mid lane pool, especially for Nemesis. Nemesis yesterday did not have the best of games versus Mad Lions. He actually was responsible for that last game not going to plan either, not putting too much blame on that moment specifically, but you guys did want to highlight something about the champion pool.
So one of the most important things when it comes to drafting is your blind picks. And thankfully, we had Wonder's interview right before coming into this one, and Wonder already pointed it out, so it feels like I'm stealing his point. It's really important that as you're watching your favorite teams draft, what champions they grab when it comes to blind pick, particularly in mid. And Nemesis is going time and again to the Twisted Fate. Yeah, you can see he's got the Corki and the Orianna, but he's going to that Twisted Fate in a lot of these cases. Whereas Nukeduck is much wider and much more diverse in his champion pool about kind of grabbing those Oriannas, those Azirs every single time.
I mean, Champion Ocean, that's what we praised him for so long, right?
But what I don't get is that Veigar could work really well with a lot of Fnatic's comps and into a lot of the blind picks that are really popular right now, but he still is forcing this Twisted Fate, and I don't like it. I don't like how it's being executed on, and I don't like its high priority in the blind pick for him.
And I think it's interesting because when you contrast that to Origen, what we're seeing is, I think, a lot of experimentation within the first 2 weeks. We heard from Destiny yesterday that his words, we went back to our boring style, and like I don't think.
But that's your words after that. I think.
And I'm like, well, I feel like I'm just like I feel like that is just the meta right now, which is that teams are going more of a scaling approach. Teams are taking a slow approach to the early game, but that doesn't mean that Xerxe isn't doing anything in the early game. I think where we see a lot of stagnation is in the mid game, and this is where I think that given the current meta and the mid lane pool, we're getting to see an opportunity for Nukeduck to thrive.
As we're heading into the draft phase, I just want to push back a little bit. I watch a lot of the LPL, and I do think you're right. That is the meta that the LEC has shown, but that isn't necessarily the global meta. The LPL is playing a pretty fast style, playing a lot more mid-game 1-2 item power spikes, and not just relying on the scaling.
I mean, it's important to remember, though, that I think that when we talk about the context of scaling, when both teams are running primarily team fight compositions, we're actually seeing faster games this split than last split, when we saw a lot more aggressive comps. And I think it's just because games get decided like a lot more decisively. Yeah. And so I think it's quite effective in way to allow Origen to actually close out the games faster.
Well, your first questions have been answered. We get a Kalista band out on the blue side from Fnatic as predicted, and the TF is not going to see the rift.
I feel like I'm going to say Origen helping out Fnatic there, in my opinion. The thing is like Cassiopeia would have been so good with Fnatic's draft the other day, and Nemesis is an amazing Cassio player. Now, she doesn't have great 1v1s into the likes of the Oriannas and the Azirs that go around, so maybe it feels like Fnatic are drafting a little bit more for their own individual lane powers rather than the collective composition.
We'll see. So a couple of questions you guys had were about the bot lane, but also the mid lane pool. This is becoming quite interesting. Of course, Syndra can be flexed, but TF and Syndra off the table, and that Graves locked in again for Selfmade.
So I think it's Trundle plus Ezreal here for Origen. With two of the SD junglers being up and available, I think that it would make a lot of sense for that to be what Origen prioritized, and also Upset. Pretty famous for his Ezreal as one of his comfort picks, and given that we talked about these S to 80 carries, like I also loop in Syndra included in that, so I'm surprised that that isn't the early priority.
I mean, yeah, he could go for the Trundle. Xerxe does have kind of that Nidalee pick in the pocket.
Also true.
And Nidalee is one of the great matchups into Graves.
Sure.
Now, because it is an Ezreal, you'd usually see Nidalee like something like the Aphelios. Obviously, Aphelios being banned in this case because her steroid's going to mean a lot more than it would for an Ezreal who's still maximizing his damage.
But she still complements him, right?
Yeah, it still helps.
And I think that I'm curious as to what Fnatic prioritize now, because as they go for the Soraka a bit. That's interesting. So what I didn't realize yesterday, when Ender and I were on the Analyst, we were talking about, I expected Soraka to be weaker in that 2 versus 2, but she just dumpstered on the Wukong on the center.
It didn't help that those hooks were hitting where they should not have hit.
But I also think that the thing you got to remember about Soraka, she's typically picked in a fashion where she can be lane dominant, and I think that because of the spammability of her Q, and when you pair up with a strong engaged support, she can be actually very strong.
You got your wish. And so did she.
It's also really important because this is one of the key things that Fnatic were missing in the comp. The Twisted Fate is denied, and now they've swapped to the Leona from the Nautilus from the comp that they ran yesterday. They couldn't connect on the range, or they couldn't contest with the range that the other team was bringing. Now you still do have great zone control from Orianna. So if I'm Origen right now, I look at this comp and I'm like, okay, your primary damage dealer that you've already shown is the Graves. If it's going to be the same thing, like I'm grabbing as much zone control tools as possible. I'm just going to keep you at arm's length and really play around that short range that champion has.
Let me ask you, from yesterday, of course, we see a little bit of an adaptation for the comp from Fnatic, and then it was also the story of that Graves is going to be the main damage dealer, and then there also was the TF. But TF had to go do incredible flanks to even make it work. So what would you like to see out of the mid lane to help that Graves?
The Azir.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing that Andrew and I were actually talking about yesterday, where we think an Azir earlier priority would have made a lot of sense, but they clearly value making sure they have a strong engaged support to make sure that the Soraka bot lane works. one of my concerns for Fnatic was that yesterday, while I think that they scaled very well, they actually had no backline threat onto the Orianna, which is why I'm quite a fan of the Leona, because I think it's much easier to dive onto the Orianna than compared to yesterday.
I agree with you, and I like the Leona adjustment. I actually think that as we go down like the inception of Fnatic's drafting here, because there's so many moving pieces, I don't want to call it a problem because that's too strong of a word. The issue may actually be the high priority on Graves as a champion that does have answers in the current meta, because it does feel like he's still a core of how this composition works. Like, I agree with you. I would prefer a higher priority on Azir, because I think that champion ease of execution and his power in the meta right now versus the high priority in the Graves that we've seen from Fnatic.
Well, we're tunneling a lot on Fnatic, so let's look at what Origen is building up here. The Sett is an option for Xerxe. He already played it. Now, when we think about Origen, we think about scaling, we think about lane kingdom, we think about team fights, and this is looking pretty good so far, Vedius.
I mean, I think Origen have drafted very meta, and also they've got a lot of comfort. We already talked about how Nukeduck seems to trend towards the Orianna in the current state, and we're actually seeing very similarities between Mad Lions and Origens, where Orianna is just blind pickable. They think she's safe enough to first pick, which I think is pretty cool. I like that we're seeing some further adaptation from Fnatic, because I do think the damage was lacking and dive was lacking from yesterday. And pairing the Leona with the Ekko, and if they tie this in with more dive with something like the Zac, I think that it all fits in nicely to add better threat onto the Orianna that was ultimately the biggest threat that they couldn't get to against Mad Lions yesterday.
And that's also just a great answer against a champion like Ezreal. Like, when you have so much safety on him, you have to bring multiple layers of dive. So we have Wukong, we have Ekko, we have the range of Leona, as well as the line damage of a Graves, and then the Soraka ultimate on top of it to protect those people who are diving the back line.
Now, what I do think is interesting is Origen could go for Mordekaiser here. We've seen it as an answer to Wukong in the past.
We're deleting Soraka, that's what that is.
Okay, so actually Origen's going for more of a wombo combo style. This is like the most traditional team fight you could literally ever ask for, and I think it's very cool. Seeing Alphari on tanks again is not what I expected, but I'm looking forward to it. I think Origen are just straight up going for the 5v5, and they're saying, Fnatic, we think we can match you.
Fantastic comps on both sides. Now, yesterday we saw that we thought that it wasn't going to go well in lane for the Soraka. It did. How is Origen going to shut it down, and how easy is it for them?
It's much harder this time around, though, because it's Ezreal and Thresh, so you have a ton of safety in that lane. I do not expect this to be as bloodthirsty as the game we saw yesterday for that 2v2 bot side.
I agree.
All right, small prediction after the drafts, fast, Vedius, and
I mean, I like both drafts. I think Origins is easy to play, but I think Fnatic have more late game options. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards Fnatic, but it depends on what form Nemesis shows up today.
I think Fnatic's comp has more agency at more points on the map than Origin's comp. If this comes down to Baron fights and Drake fights that decide it, then I like Origins.
Let's see them. It's time for our match of the week, so let's head over to the casters for Fnatic versus OG.
And on to Summoner's Rift we go for the final game of the week. For the match of the week, it's Fnatic versus Origen. A match that has delivered so many times in the past, and today delivers us not only Soraka in the bottom lane, not only Nemesis's first ever Ekko game in European history, but also a Malphite in the top lane. What more could you want?
It is looking a little bit bonkers after the draft, and I'm really excited to see how these comps end up playing against each other. I think the analyst desk set us up super well. Hello, everyone. Because, look, I'm going to be looking a lot at this bottom lane early on. We saw it get super explosive early. Again, don't expect Rekkles and Hylissang to be getting those 2v2 kills, but silence can be a big pain for a lot of these champions, especially later in the game. I'm thinking Xerxe tries running at the back line, and then all of a sudden he gets silenced and he can't press his R. So that could be a problem. But of course, Malphite plus Orianna is going to be hell for Rekkles.
Totally agree with you, but I think we have to focus on Rekkles in the bottom lane once again, because I have been asking myself this question, and I want to ask it to Chad as well. Rekkles on Soraka, zero or hero. Is this something we want to see him play more, or are we saddened by the fact that he's not on AD carries? Are we saddened by the fact it feels like he's playing Janna all over again?
It does not feel like the Janna, Medic. I'll say that. I'll say that. Look, I think the 2018 Rekkles on supports was a big feels bad, man. But I actually like seeing a different look for this guy who's been around for so long, and especially when a guy like Selfmade next to him is being the one sort of funneled all of these resources. So yes, we want to see Rekkles on AD carries most of the time, but I do not mind seeing a Soraka from time to time, and already it looks like Selfmade's looking towards mid.
It's coming towards mid for the gank. You guys can vote, by the way, in Twitch chat. 0 or hero, depending on whose side of the discussion you come out on. Selfmade's going to face check straight on into Xerxe here. The face breaker should be available. The Haymaker uses actually... Xerxe, I think, may have not taken E to start off there. Yeah, he's gone QW, so he didn't have the stun on the Sett.
So there was a lot. Wow, 50-50. That's close.
Right down the
you
middle.
rarely get those in chat, but I think it has to be said that there was that level 1 invade from Fnatic too. We were asking these questions and missed some of that. So now it will be Xerxe responding, where he got forced out of that top side. He now finds himself the Fnatic red buff and is set up to continue playing around at this bottom side of the map.
I think it's the closest vote I've ever seen when we've done a question like this to chat. Obviously, we will see if it works out for Fnatic today. It didn't yesterday, although Rekkles did have a good performance on the Soraka. And here, they said it on the analyst desk, Origen have built themselves some tools to take that Soraka out of the fight before the fight even really begins.
Yeah, that can be a big problem for them. Xerxe moving down towards bot side. Look at the wave, look at the hook.
Hook's gonna land, there's the ignite as well, and Hylissang might have just been called out, but the silence! Xerxe couldn't face break it because of the silence ender! It's so devastating!
That is a tilter. Xerxe walks into the bottom lane, maybe could have thought about being a little snappier on the flash or something, but regardless, like, Rekkles with the silence ends up doing a lot of work. Now, it is still not all great news for Fnatic. This lane is pushing towards Upset's side of the map. Rekkles lost his support. Hylissang had to go back to base, so he's just going to stand back here. And he can't really farm. He doesn't know that Destiny took the reset there, so is still expecting there could be a Thresh in the bush. Maybe there's a Sett nearby as well, and that means gold, CS, all going to be stacking up for Upset.
Really, it's going to be able to farm himself up to just a tad in this bottom lane. We'll be able to get about a 5 to 6 CS advantage. And you want to talk, Ender?
Oh, no.
The problem is something's like, I thought you were dropping your pen for a second, and then I was like, do you want to talk?
No, I was going to say, because the state of that lane bot side, like, I think Xerxe can revisit down there. You still have a flash on Destiny. He's maybe a little bit slow on this movement because Fnatic have now fully pushed out that wave. And yeah, Selfmade was going to be down towards that bottom side, but I think there was a window there where OG could have looked to make a move.
Xerxe deciding against it for the moment. Selfmade, as you say, is down on his Krugs. And once again on the Graves, very much one of the key damage dealers for this team, as we see Nemesis and Nukeduck just trading in the mid lane. Nukeduck hasn't had the best of Orianna performances over the last couple of days, but he is a historically very strong Orianna player, and Nemesis actually stepping up quite aggressively here. Now, Nukeduck doesn't have a huge amount of mana, but Nemesis is going to be forced back.
Well, the important thing, too, is Nemesis has already used that TP to get back to lane. So you can see that while Nemesis had the counter pick, early lane phase, not necessarily the greatest news. Orianna does so well into melee champions, of course, can spam around that ball whenever you walk up to land CS and stack up the passive for those bonus AA damages. Now, Nemesis will just be taking a reset and is going to be fine overall in the CS. Really what we're looking for with this Ekko pick is, of course, you think maybe in a side lane later on he could be valuable, but also looking for potential roams once he hits that level 6 to make moves around the map.
Yeah, get out of the lane, try and help Selfmade with some of these ganks. And I do bring up the Graves once again because yesterday Selfmade on this Graves had such a strong performance. Did 30% of his team's damage. That is the highest a jungler has done this split. Second highest is Selfmade at 25%. Third highest is 21%. So he did almost 10% more damage than the third best, or third highest damage dealing jungler in the entire T of this season. And he's such a carry when you put him on something like this.
Hey, I mean, he's having a phenomenal year, and Fnatic have recognized that and built 2 comps in a row around him. This one even more so, because it's not like you have that other, DPS threat in the mid lane. That's the Twisted Fate that scales very well and doing consistent DPS. It really is about that Graves. Now, we see a lot of trading up towards the top side. The Malphite is a pick that I've actually been waiting to see pop out as an answer into the Wukong for a while. We know Malphite does magic damage, and Wukong likes to stack up armor via his passive, but can also just trade quite well into the champion. Wukong really waits until he can finish off a first item before he starts doing big chunks up against tanks in this matchup, and Alphari has also gone into playing for the laning phase a bit with that Arcane Comet to make sure his poke sticks a little bit more.
I like the comment. I think getting, Seismic Shard is such an easy ability to hit because it's point and click, so you don't actually really have to aim it. You just get quite a lot of damage down. We see Origen now deciding to switch up towards the top side of the map pretty early on. 7 minutes is about a minute before the Rift Herald spawns, so they will get control over this area, but they're going to have to wait before they go for that objective.
OG has an obsession with objectives, but this swap is coming in sooner than expected. Bwipo is quite low, but the TP comes through. So this was a pretty clever use. Oh, he's teleporting back in. Now, here's the thing. Selfmade is nearby, and the hook goes wide.
Right, I think Destiny was just using the hook to try and get Upset in the fray, but Bwipo with the Cyclone already going to help Selfmade get the first kill, and now the Ignite is sticking out of Bwipo, but Upset's only level 5, and this is a great fight for Fnatic. They find 2.
Wow!
Selfmade's looking for more. Destiny has the flash to try and get away, but with the play, he will delay Fnatic from pressing any further forward.
And
Selfmade's dead.
Oh, he missed everything.
Dead.
He should. Oh, behind the tower!
Oh, that's beautiful from Destiny.
Unbelievable. So many things happened right there. Graves can't auto attack through towers. His bullets will get stopped by that. So a beautiful flash there from Destiny as a lot of those skill shots from Selfmade went wide. There's a lot to unpack in this play. So at the start, Bwipo is trying to trade super aggro into Alphari, and Destiny uses the hook just to get over the wall. The Lantern to bring him in is great too, but Bwipo does so much damage, and as we were saying, Selfmade is in the area. So he takes to 6 off of this play, and importantly, Rekkles in bot lane also hit level 6 to be able to drop an ultimate into that one as well. And Fnatic tried to keep on going forward, but misses the flash Q with a nice sidestep by Destiny. The ult also goes wide, and you hate to see that. Destiny with the style.
That's a really smart play from Destiny in the end. I think Selfmade was a bit greedy. Let's be honest, you didn't need to dive that tower. You get 2 kills, perhaps you could just accept that. But we did see a repeat gank come out from Xerxe up towards the top lane. He was able to force Bwipo out, but wasn't able to find it.
But look at this. Selfmade has a finished warrior enchantment. So while OG wanted to make that swap, I don't think they're in the position to try and, immediately start up this Rift Herald just because of how powerful Selfmade is. Even with a lot of ultimates from Fnatic's side on cooldown, Selfmade can kind of walk anywhere and fight Xerxe at the time being. And this is only something that we're going to see expand over the course of the game. I think in yesterday's match against Mad Lions, he had a 4-level lead at one point, which is just kind of absurd to think about. And eventually he's going to start picking up CS instead of Rekkles as we enter in towards the mid game. And this is just going to be Fnatic style, right? You don't need to necessarily contest the Rift Herald. You're just going to be wanting to trade CS on Selfmade, who is 1 full level up.
Does mean that Origen will get the first dragon of the game and the Rift Herald relatively early on here, so they are stacking up those objectives. But of course, what Fnatic will be thinking is, well, if we're 2,000 gold ahead by the time the 3rd dragon spawns, it doesn't really matter that Origen got the first 2, right? We can just fight them for that, make sure that they don't get towards the soul point, and start to take our advantage later on. Now, Bwipo has the Cyclone, pops in with the Nimbus Strike, and Alphari's going to try and use his ultimate to get away, but as you say, Ender, that's a kill.
So
it is a kill.
He almost got behind the tower, though, and we've seen that be really bad news for Selfmade. A nice move right there. Again, Alphari maybe a little bit too far forward, knowing that his entire team has sort of showed on that top side of the map. Didn't think that a Graves could finish him off, but things are going very, very well for Selfmade at the moment. I think this sort of segues us into like a conversation about these team comps, because you say like, oh, OG have this insane wombo combo. Well, on the flip side, Fnatic's comp is about building individual leads and then splitting up the fight. Seeing Selfmade, Bwipo, Nemesis all very up high there on the gold distribution is wonderful for them, because the way Fnatic want to play these fights is you have 2 divers in the Ekko and the Wukong that jump Nukeduck and Upset, and you want to split the fight. So Graves can tear through the front line of a Sett and a Malphite, while those 2 players cause havoc with the disruption they have, the CC, the ability to sort of drop damage and dip out of the fights with Ekko ultimate and clones from Bwipo is going to be something that OG have to be very aware of and play around accordingly.
And of course, you always have Rekkles at the back of the fight, just topping everyone up. Just being like, oh, Graves, you've gone a little bit low. Here, have a heal. Oh, Nemesis, you had to ult back and you've taken a bit of a chunk. Here, have a heal. It just really helps keep that momentum going in the team fights. Origen, though, will be looking to dive on someone, to get that Shockwave Unstoppable Force combination, to use the Showstopper to try and catch Fnatic out before they can get that ball rolling.
And this is a nice move from them, too. Right before that Mountain Drake spawns, drop the Herald in mid to get some control. Now, I was assuming, hey, maybe they move down in towards that Drake and pick that one up, but showing some patience and some caution around objectives, which is not super typical for OG, because one of the problems they have had in a few of their games is just over-forcing around these objectives, but because they were able to pick up that first Cloud Drake of the game, I think they're just feeling way more comfortable, right? You know, you don't risk Fnatic getting 2 and then looking to snowball in the next 10 minutes, so OG going to play this slowly and intelligently, I feel.
Right now, just don't want to take a fight when you're at a numbers disadvantage, but upset, yeah, this is not the best place to be. Hylissang can tank that for a long time with Ekko. The cleanse comes away, the Solar Flares dodge as well, and Hylissang is still tanking up the tower. Oh, no. There comes the wish, but all that Hylissang can wish for is a speedy demise. Caught underneath the tower, upset with a pretty strong outplay there. Did have to burn the flash and the cleanse to get away, but he was ready for Fnatic's dive in that bot lane.
Yeah, you know, he got out of that one no problem, and Rekkles even wasting the ultimate there as well. As a good hook from Destiny will come through, but there's no one to follow that one up, so Rekkles just gonna question what exactly was going on in the bottom lane. His recall keeps getting interrupted. He is not happy with this one, but Selfmade will be in the area. I feel like you could just call Selfmade over here to farm the wave if you really wanted to snowball him, but Rekkles still not quite on that.
Let him get at least one item
yes,
first.
Sure,
okay?
sure.
Let him at least, just because he's playing a support champ, doesn't mean he doesn't need any gold. And I do want to bring attention to something that's kind of been happening between the mid and top lanes. There's a little bit of a game of musical chairs going on here. And so what happens is Fnatic send Nemesis into Alphari because they know Alphari's only going to build armor because he's Malphite and that's what Malphites do. And then Origen say, well, okay, well we can't have our Malphite who's only building armor playing into this AP damage dealer, this magic damage dealer. So we have to switch Nukeduck up into the lane where Nemesis is. And then immediately when Nukeduck arrives in the lane, they say, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put Nemesis down into the lane where the Malphite is. And then the Malphite moves around and then Nukeduck moves around. And it's this wonderful game of magical chairs and I'm really excited to see where it ends.
Yeah, I love magical chairs.
Magical,
yeah.
I said
like,
magical chairs, I meant musical.
My favorite game. Very, very complex game for sure. Maybe a little bit less complex than League of Legends, but I do think you bring up some good points because right now OG's only response into it is to either, you know, suck up the fact that they have to play suboptimal matchups or go for those constant switcheroos. But eventually, OG are going to reach this point where they want to continue to fight around objectives, look to set up forced fights, especially as, you know, Ekko and Wukong continue to get items that only benefit them in the 1 versus 1. So it'll be less of a question of OG switching around to lanes to match Fnatic and more of, hey, when can they find the windows to actually abandon side lanes and then force fights?
Hylissang's looking to force a fight here. The Cyclone comes up with the unstoppable force. Speedy enough from Alphari, and now Nemesis is in a 1v3 in the bottom lane, but he's going to clear out those minions pretty sharpish, and Destiny won't land the hook. Nemesis still had the Chrono Break as well to try and get out. Hylissang looking for the Demolish block here on the tower, just trying to chunk it away as quickly as possible. We are past the plates falling, so you're not getting any extra gold for just doing damage to the towers, but the closer you can get to it falling, obviously, the more beneficial that is for you as a team. 15 minutes in, 1,000 gold lead for Fnatic, and a lot of that's going to sit on Selfmade.
Yeah, I mean, almost exactly 1,000, 12,000, I believe, or 1,200 rather, as Selfmade does find Xerxe here.
And Xerxe in the silence, now has the Haymaker, has a Showstopper as well as he tries to bring Hylissang back and will flash across the wall. But that is the power of the Equinox. The power of that silence from Soraka makes it just that little bit longer before Xerxe can get himself out of a fight.
Yeah, and this is a big deal. You know, we're checking in on Selfmade. He's up 2 levels now over Xerxe. Probably not 2 full levels, but about a level and a half, as well as about 1,300 gold. Only going to continue to extend as he picks up minions here. Now, yesterday, he went for lethality in his build. There you go, 1,500, something in there for the Graves. He went for early lethality, which I don't think is going to be the play this game. Because again, how Fnatic are viewing their approach into teamfights is very much about Selfmade hitting the front line. He gets outranged and CC'd by the Ezreal and the Orianna, right? He won't be able to get to them reliably. So I think his best bet, and he's doing it now, is not to go for the Duskblade, but rather to itemize into a Black Cleaver to shred through the front line, and then, of course, go into the very popular Death's Dance route, which makes it really impossible for any tank damage to stick to him.
It's just such an effective item. Alongside the grit, it makes Graves so tanky and so good at sustaining, and then you have a Soraka just to back you up as well. Destiny misses the hook, and it just goes a couple of inches wide.
He didn't have perfect vision on Selfmade there, was trying to predict Selfmade walking straight forward with that ward, so not going to hold that one too much against Destiny right there, but both teams, you know, putting a lot of pressure around this Rift Herald. I feel like the play is going to end up being that Ocean Drake in about 30 seconds, especially because Fnatic, with Bwipo down bot side, they don't have great TP wards for him to get into the OG backline just yet. That is going to be their mission. If they're trying to match OG in a team fight, you want to make sure an Ekko or a Wukong can come in at a good angle to, again, zone Nukeduck and upset away from dealing damage to Selfmade.
It kind of feels like Origen have given up on this dragon, though, because Nukeduck doesn't have teleport and he's stuck in the top lane. They're going to trade a Rift Herald for the dragon, which is not a very Origen thing to do. Usually they much prefer to fight around the dragons. They have the third most dragons taken of any team in the league, but this time they say, okay, you guys can take the Ocean, we will get the Rift Herald, we'll get some damage on the top tower, and we'll try and get ourselves towards that next item spike.
So the important thing to note here is we've been talking about how OG have the team fight team. Fnatic have a lot of great options and like are very strong at this point in the match too. You know, Rekkles, his items very cheap, very smooth building. When you can go for the Forbidden Idol as a 1800 gold purchase, or 800 gold purchase rather, and just quickly get CDR and bonuses to the healing that you dump out. Selfmade with that big advantage in the jungle too, and as well as Nemesis, who's almost done with that Gnasher's Tooth for the fast 40% CDR. The fights right now would be very, very scrappy, so that's why we're seeing OG take the more defensive approach where they're just trading objectives. And it's important to note that OG are trading. They're not just seeding things and handing them out for free to Fnatic. They are getting something in return.
And it's something Origen have been historically very good at doing, right? They were always the team that could understand what the other team wanted to do, look in their playbook and say, okay, if the other team does this, what can we do? Well, we can take the Rift Herald, we can take the top tower, we can get some more gold on us, because they do scale well. You know, an Ezreal and an Orianna will only have more impact as they get towards 2 or 3 items. And if they can get to that point and force Fnatic into some of these team fights, they have a very strong team fight and comp. The question is whether they can do that and whether Fnatic are willing to take the skirmish to them a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think for OG, how they set up for these fights, it almost has to be in 2 big pushes at Fnatic. The first one, it needs to get flashes off of like a Rekkles and a Selfmade, because otherwise, you know, pro players can dodge a Malphite ult coming in. Even if Malphite plus Orianna is an insane combination, if Rekkles has flash, he can get out of that. And if those 2 ultimates are dodged, OG's teamfight is not looking good at all. So they need to make sure those spells can be off, or they're coming out of the Fog of War and catching Fnatic quite off guard. Otherwise, they could find themselves really overcommitting, because once Malphite is in, he stays in that fight.
Yeah, don't have too many tools to get out of it as a Malphite. You kind of hit your seismic shard on someone and then hope you can run fast enough to get out of the fight. But we'll see how the fights develop as they go on later in the game. For now, let's have a look at exactly where we are in terms of level. Nemesis is actually the highest level in the game. I expect Selfmade to be up there as well. As you can see, he's in 3rd, lagging just a little bit behind Nukeduck. But the big question really becomes how far Nukeduck can get towards that level 16 and whether Bwipo can escape this fight in the top lane, as he just uses his clone to get himself out.
But as this play goes down, Xerxe reveals himself. So now Selfmade, I think he got the blue buff there. No, he didn't get the blue buff, but he just gets the Gromp camp, which of course is going to be good news. Nemesis can walk down bot side and pick that up too. So Selfmade is getting some extra camp, so you can see that lead starting to balloon on up here. And good on Xerxe to try and trade towards the top side of the map. But Selfmade is going to be a problem for the front line of OG, who are now getting out-leveled by him, and the itemization coming through from Selfmade is going to cut through both Alphari and Xerxe.
I mean, it's the reasoning behind a Malphite pick, isn't it? As much as you can build a lot of armor penetration, you can build stacking armor penetration in the form of the Black Cleaver, but Alphari will have a huge amount of armor. He's already got the Ninja Tabis to reduce the auto attack damage. He's already got the Sunfire and the Bramble Vest. He's only going to stack it up even more. And because he's Malphite, it helps him even more in the fights. Gives you more damage as the game goes on. I was a little surprised to see Alphari, the player that has been Nukeduck.
Oh, hello.
Pulled out a little bit here with the Solar Flare. Selfmade's on his way in as well, but they know the rest of Origen around here. And there is the showstopper. Hylissang's going to pop his stopwatch to try and survive, but he's already down. Alphari has the ultimate here if they want to try and re-engage, but that was a little bit over-eager there from Hylissang. There is the Unstoppable Onslaught. Unstoppable Force is the name of it, and Nemesis will go down for it as well.
Yeah, big misstep there. Hylissang going way deep, and they get the TP out of Alphari, so kill for TP isn't the worst trade in the world, but Alphari still has ultimate. So Nemesis gets caught out there and will convert in towards 2 kills. Now, luckily for Fnatic, OG are not immediately pivoting in towards the Baron here, but you can see the idea. They want to jump on towards Nukeduck, whose flash was on cooldown, I do believe, but where's the damage? Like, Selfmade is there, sure, but Oh man, Xerxe just picks up Hylissang and zones them away from the fight. So it just turns into an easy pick. Nemesis sticks around to clear a ward.
He still had flash there as well at the end. Like it
it's
felt
so
a little
strange.
greedy from Fnatic. Yeah, just felt like a little bit of an outplay. Obviously, credit to Origen for capitalizing on it, right? Sometimes you would just be like, let's get out of here instead of let's go in for the fight. But they catch out Hylissang, and because of that, they get they get back within about 1,000 gold or so.
Look, this is going to be a big fight here. You can see Nukeduck TPing in towards mid lane. I have to point it out, Selfmade went first array to Dirk, win 4 of 5 champions on OG, have already built armor, including an Iceborne Gauntlet on that Ezreal. I cannot help but feel like this is a mistake when he is going to be such a major damage-dealing threat. And again, the focus for him is to hit frontline in these fights. It is very unlikely that he can reliably reach an Orianna or an Ezreal.
So the argument would be get a death dance.
Get a death dance.
Get a death dance instead. Of course, he will be reducing the amount of armor the Origen players have, so then the lethality after that could do something, but I agree with you, Ender. I'm giving him an option.
That's a
sort of
huge
plan
ult.
comes in, but Destiny, great play from him, will keep him alive. And now Bwipo is in the middle of this fight, but he's already down as Upset takes the kill. Fnatic in a 4v5 are going to try and re-engage, try and find some damage on this dragon. They have control of this bush. And the ocean mapping can be so important. Destiny once again with a good play into the stopwatch, but Hylissang is still alive. Nemesis is jumping in for parallel conversions. Doesn't find a stun, and he's going to jump back with the chrono break, and Hylissang is really low as well. Selfmade still very healthy, Rekkles still very healthy. They can look for a 2v5 in this fight if they need it, but Upset is jumping around as Selfmade is getting forced out. The Grievous Wounds goes out, but there goes Hylissang going back in, looking for the fight. Parallel the conversions getting on Nemesis. Nemesis finds one, but he's going to get taken out as well, and now it's only Rekkles and Selfmade left alive, and Selfmade jumps in. He steals it. He gets it. Third dragon of the game for Fnatic, but they got demolished in the fight.
Yeah, OG take that fight. Selfmade is able to recover a little bit right there with the smite steal on the Ocean Drake. We are dead even in gold, and these fights are close. You can see the theory of both comps as Hylissang started off that engage, but even after every single ultimate went down from OG, the range advantage they have over the Graves made it so difficult for Selfmade to actually do damage towards the tail end of that fight, and OG approach it well. They are now in a position where they have the good items on Nukeduck too and can look to carry this forward.
That Liandry's complete alongside the Seraphs means that he can get survival for the upright players. You know, you get that shield, you put your own shield on you, you command protect. And we saw it was fortunate for Selfmade that he was able to get the steal. Like, give him credit, collateral damage into smite, it was a good combo.
Sure.
But if he hadn't got that, how bad is that fight for Fnatic? Because they're no longer on soul point.
Yeah, the soul point is going to be big for them because if you think like these fights are going poorly, it can only continue to get potentially worse. Now as OG look for the collapse on towards Bwipo, who has flash.
And they're just going to force him back from the tower.
Yeah. So right now, Fnatic are splitting out the map, and this is exactly what they need to be doing. Nemesis is top lane. He wants to trade that turret up top. You can also see Selfmade immediately makes the pivot. He's like, I need some resistances here. That is a good move by him. So Fnatic are going to continue until that Ocean Drake spawns to play the spread out game. They don't want to walk themselves into any potential picks from the Malphite. Let's watch this play coming on through from Origen, because again, at the start of this fight, Hylissang decides we are going in, but the approach from Fnatic is not there. They're fighting the front-to-back team fight. The dive of Nemesis, he tries to come in here and he does a good job towards the start, and that's why Destiny gets bursted down. But there isn't that continued zoning in towards the backline because Bwipo got bursted down so early. Selfmade can't step forward to deal the damage. Upset was slowing him down with procs of the Iceborne Gauntlet, and Nukeduck also stepping forward. It's those backliners that can walk into the face of the Graves and force him away from the fight, but of course do recover with a great steal.
It's just a smite win, isn't it? Didn't even use the Origen. Now going to start up the Baron. They're trying to call Fnatic on the fight. Now, no flash on Hylissang, no flash on Selfmade.
That's a TP flank.
His TP flank coming in,
too
but
late.
there's only 1,000 HP left on the Baron. It's going to get smited down. Upset is the one to secure it. Hylissang going in with the Zenith Blade. Bwipo trying to get the flank off towards the top side, but Nukeduck with the shield is going to keep himself very healthy. Unstoppable force comes out from Alphari as they look for the kill on Bwipo, and already is down. The host going to land as well as Hylissang gets scored out, but a 3-man stop with a parallel conversion. The shockwave! And now it's not on Upset to try and turn it around. Double kill for him as he jumps forward. Rekkles going to fall next as Upset. That's the triple. He's looking for more. He's looking for 4, but he can't quite get there in time.
How hyped does he want to get? He has the flash if he wants to continue. The teleport comes in on the top lane from Alphari. They're just going to be pushing for structures. May very well be able to take an inhibitor tower off this fight. fight.
What a good call from Origen to set up for that Baron, though. Would love to see how they establish the control over the area, but now Fnatic lose out the fight. Only Selfmade and Nemesis left alive, and it actually looks like Origen are going to call off this push before they get to the inhibitor towers.
It's the Origen patience right there. They won the fight, they got the Baron. They didn't want to be stuck on the map for Fnatic to be able to respawn on that one. I mean, that fight looked like it was going really poorly because Alphari got burst out so much, but then Fnatic all walk into that tiny little corridor and it gets really tough for them. So what do OG see on the map? Well, they see Bwipo in bot lane. Even though he has the TP, OG feels so confident in looking for a fight. And I mean, Fnatic see OG starting this one up, and as soon as but they can't actually see into the pit, right, with that Scuttle Crab vision. Looks like getting a pick down towards the bottom lane.
Nukeduck has caught Hylissang, or Hylissang's caught himself. Well, Upset is legendary now, 9-1-1.
Wow.
The only player in this game, well, there's 2 players in this game with more than 1 kill, and it's Selfmade and Upset. The 2 carries for the teams. And right now, Upset is having the lion's share of the glory in this game. They're pushing in for this bot lane tier 2. Alphari is holding mid right now, but Origen, this is a very strong performance from so far. A few mistakes from Fnatic, but Origen are looking great.
Look at that, Alphari just jumping straight on towards Rekkles. He's gonna try and kite this one out, and has Bwipo to help him.
Alphari will have the blast going, Bwipo will follow him as
look at their
crosshair.
base.
But yeah, this is the thing, you're distracting 2 players.
And Fnatic have 0 wave clear. They cannot deal with Baron minions inside of their base. They also can't step forward because then they just get engaged upon. They're lucky that Malphite isn't around here, but it is not looking good at all for Fnatic.
27 minutes in, a 3,000 gold lead for Origen, and now this could be the moment for Selfmade to really stand up. There's an Ocean Dragon, 16 seconds away, but Hylissang almost dead before he gets in there. The Witch was not used, it was just the heal. Hylissang now going to get healed up once again, and Origen have been able to find the chunk out that they wanted before this fight really erupts.
Selfmade has to be the hero, but he doesn't have Smite to go for the steal here against Fnatic. It would have to be some miracle combination of abilities to burst this one down, and quite frankly, Fnatic are not in the spot to do it.
Rekkles has stolen a Baron with an Ezreal Q already this season. We'll see if he can do it again. The loop around coming out, as you say. Alphari doesn't have the ultimate.
They can cut off Fnatic. Fnatic are out of position. There's a minion wave cutting them off. Alphari is walking straight up into the Tri-Brush, and OG are looking to pick out Nemesis.
So Nemesis could jump back. Look where Origen position, because that Chrono Break could be big. Hylissang going to step forward. There's the Chrono Break, but Nemesis unable to find any. The Solar Flare coming out as well. It's going to land onto Destiny. Bwipo has the flank position here, but the Shockwave is going to hit onto Nemesis. He's still alive, though, and Upset's getting chunked out towards the backside. The cloud
Upset, he's burning! He's burning!
He cleanses away the power. It's still shut down! Selfmade finds Upset, and that's all the damage of Origen wiped off the face of the rift. Fnatic are going to get the soul, and maybe they found their way back into this game.
Unbelievable right there. Selfmade able to find Upset. Upset couldn't touch anything. He was trying to lifesteal with the Death Dance, but he ticked down and fell down right there. Because look, OG have the perfect setup. They're finding this turnaround on towards Fnatic, but Nemesis buys so much time, and this is what Fnatic needed. They needed the team fight to be scattered, to be spread around, with Upset creating havoc. Nukeduck can't be touching Selfmade here. That's going to be very pivotal. Upset has 4 people jumping towards him. He has no peel because they're all trying to dive on towards Nemesis. Yes, they do get Nemesis out in the end, but it is not a worth trade for OG. As Selfmade takes him down. Yeah, it was close. It was on the way.
It was on its way to him. Oh, what a fight from Fnatic, though. And a moment before we said we wanted to see Selfmade step up. This is his moment to prove himself. And what does he do? Well, Nemesis did all the damage, but Selfmade did the final tick that mattered, taking Upset out. Now the Ocean Drake sits on Fnatic, and what more healing could you need than a Soraka, an Ocean Drake, a Death's Dance complete on Bwipo, a Death's Dance complete on Selfmade, and an Ardent Sensor for good measure.
Yeah, so I will, Ocean Drake, terrible news for Origen. They do have anti-healing. They've got the Bramble Vest on both Alphari and Xerxe, guys that Selfmade very likely has to hit on top of the Mortal Reminder for Upset. So they have the tools to apply this, not just to reduce the Ocean Soul, but also the Soraka and a Death Stance for Selfmade. But I don't know, Fnatic have so much healing that it may not be enough if Fnatic are able to execute the fight like they just did. They need it to be spread out, but they cannot get caught out.
Bwipo has the decoy available. Not going to use it quite yet. The redemption's coming down as well. Now he uses it. Facebreaker comes out though, and there's a showstopper. Bwipo's going to cyclone on the backline. Bwipo getting healed up through it all, but Upset's going to take the first kill, and now here comes the shockwave onto Nemesis. He's done as well before he can even chrono break out, and now it's all on Selfmade. You've got to make this fight work for Fnatic if you're going to manage it, because Rekkles is still alive on the backline. Hylissang goes forward, but he's going to die as well. Upset takes a second of the fight, and now it's Rekkles and Selfmade. It's all on them, but Origen found the fight that they were looking for in the bottom lane, and they're pushing in for the win.
OG may have very well just won the base. Alphari is going to be able to TP into this one. Selfmade trying to clear, but he can't auto-attack. His minions are in front of him.
What can you do in a 2v5? Selfmade unable to get the damage down. He's pulled back with a base breaker, but Upset's just focusing the Nexus. And Fnatic found a lifeline, but Origen find the Nexus. They find the win, and they will go 3-2 in the second week of the LEC Summer season.
How fun is the LEC right now?
I don't believe it!
The top of the table, everyone is just beating everyone, and even there, like, OG felt like they were in control for, you know, the last 10 minutes of the game, but then you feel like there's a sense of urgency coming as Fnatic get that Ocean Soul, but at the end of the day, it is the clash of two compositions that have very different styles. OG found that front-to-back team fight they were looking for. Alphari and Xerxe walked it on in there to find Bwipo, and, I mean, while they found the fight, Upset finished it.
What a performance from Origen and from Upset in particular. Do you want to give credit to Destiny as well? Some of his flays to stop Hylissang's engage were absolutely beautiful. And I want to just think about where this leaves our league table, Ender. Like, Mad Lions and Rogue are 4-1 at the top, and then it's Fnatic, G2, Origen, SK. And that's our top 6. That's playoffs right now. If we end the split there, those are the teams that will be making it. You guys can vote for your key player of the game at LEC on Twitter. Nukeduck, Upset, Destiny are your options. I think they all had really good performances. Nukeduck Shockwaves did a lot of work as the game went on.
That was a game. OG, credit where credit is due, found the team fights. I mean, it just shows how competitive our league can be and how competitive the top of the table can be. We got so much hype, you know, and it's like going back to Stockholm and whatnot, Fnatic versus OG, the glory days, and, you know, it looks close. It looks close again, and I'm really excited to see more of it.
So am I. We've had 2 weeks, we've got 6 more left, and we'll soon hear from Alphari before Finn joins us in the post-game lobby. Don't go anywhere. Ender, catch.
and welcome back to the LEC. Sorry. Hi, Deficio, by the way. Hi, Alphari. Great game from you guys today.
Yeah, thanks. It was a fun one for sure. I wouldn't say it was great. There was like a lot of int moments, but yeah, we got the win.
I mean, I feel like most of people were not thinking you would win against Fnatic, and I want to know, do you think you overperformed or Fnatic played bad? What's your take on this game and the way it ended?
I mean, it's second week, so saying like we shouldn't win against Fnatic is really hard to like just say this because I mean every team is pretty bad right now, honestly, and everyone's trying to figure out draft and so on. So we didn't feel much pressure. It's just we thought we could win.
Yeah.
I think they had like a pretty weird draft. We just took away their comfort picks, like Nemesis on TF, and then he kind of picked Ekko for some reason. So yeah, I mean, I guess that helped us.
Yeah, I mean, you played super well, and I agree with you on the fact that it's still very early in the split, and it echoes a talk I had with Wonder after G2's game earlier today, where he was saying basically that teams may not have the best grasp at the meta right now. Do you feel so too?
Yeah, for sure. Every team is still figuring out what is good, and of course there are still like new champions being added, so the reworked Wukong was something teams had to figure out, and teams obviously still figuring out. Valée is now a champion as well, so even though you can now like look at regions and see kind of trends happening, there's still just like new things that you have to learn every week. So yeah, right now it's all up in the air.
Do you feel like EU is also taking some examples from what's happening, let's say in the LPL, in Korea, NA, for example? Like, do you use what's done in other regions?
Maybe not NA, but other regions, I would say, yeah, probably a little bit. But I also think that typically EU it doesn't seem like many teams care too much about what the other regions are playing. We kind of the teams kind of do their own thing. Like you see with Fnatic going for this Soraka comp, or Mad going with this, Wukong bot lane with Senna thing. I think EU is a lot more creative and, they just kind of, in general, push the champions to a bit more to the limit.
I love the creativity that the meta can bring right now. I agree on that. There's been this discussion around the top 3 best top laners in the LEC, and obviously your name came up. So tell me about your last performances and what we can expect more from you coming into summer.
Well, I mean, my last 2 performances were on tanks, so I just had to sit back and farm and try not to int too much, although I did int a little bit on this Malphite. Honestly, my champion is just so OP that I couldn't resist. And then, I mean, besides this, yeah, I think I'm playing quite good, and I think that as well, some of the tops in Europe are playing better than they were last split. Some of the worst ones. So yeah, I think tops in Europe are pretty good, and hopefully I can continue to play well and play some more Malphite.
I agree with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more Malphite from you. Thank you very much, Alphari, for the interview, and congrats again on winning Match of the Week.
Thanks.
And we're gonna take a break, and coming back we'll have Sjokz, who's getting right now in PGL with Frosk. She will have Finn tonight. We'll see you in a few minutes. Stay tuned.